Hiroyoshi. In 1987, I left Chigasaki, Kanagawa Prefecture and moved to Omiya City, Saitama Prefecture. I got a new job at the Boston English Academy in Omiya City, and with it, a 1 year working visa. Until that time, I had a tourist visa when I first arrived in Japan, and then a student visa for 2 years in Chigasaki. As usual, this new job was a lucky thing for me. The BEA, or Boston English Academy, set me up in an apartment about 15 minutes on foot from Hasuda Station. Hasuda Station is 3 stops north of Omiya Station on the JR Utsunomiya line. By the way, right next door to my apartment lived a family whose 14-year-old son has become a very good friend of ours. He follows me on Insta. I walked to and from the station every day, commuting to Omiya for work. I lived on the east side of Hasuda Station. There are a variety of shops and businesses there, as is typical of most train stations. There is a supermarket, a bank, a shoe repair shop, a soba restaurant, a cleaners, etc. I was not attending the Japanese language school anymore. I now had a working visa, but I definitely wanted to continue my language studies, English and Japanese. So I wrote an ad on a simple piece of paper that said that I was looking for someone to teach me Japanese. I would pay maybe 2,500 yen or 3,000 yen per lesson. That's about 25 or 30 bucks. I forgot the price. I tacked it up on the bulletin board at the bank. They allowed me to do that. You certainly couldn't do that nowadays. A week later, I got a call from a Japanese gent named Hiroyoshi. He lived maybe 5 minutes from my new dwelling. We talked and set up a meeting time. At that meeting, we agreed to the terms, 1 hour lesson for the 3,000 yen on Saturday mornings. The next week, the lessons began at his house. The study room was upstairs, overlooking his garden, with a lot of trees in it, as I remember. You could see the railroad tracks not far in the distance. My new teacher was a no-nonsense kind of guy, and the lessons went well. But I must admit that he was strict in his teaching. After about a month, we went out for drinks together. We became friends. The lessons stopped, and for the next 10 years or so, we embarked on a number of adventures. Some were in the mountains, and some in nature, and others were in taverns and pubs around Japan, as well as family outings. Hiroyoshi had a dog. The dog's name was Happy. Hiroyoshi would take him for his daily walks into a wooded area near his house. He never used a leash, which is a law in Japan. You must use a leash. And he also never cleaned up the dog droppings, which is just proper etiquette. Hiroyoshi was 5 years younger than I am. He worked at a publishing company. He wrote articles for a magazine. I believe they were connected to food. He once told me that he kept a bottle of whiskey in the bottom drawer of his desk at work. Cool. Hiroyoshi was a fisherman. I was not into fishing at that time, but I did like and appreciate the outdoors and nature. My hometown of Michigan had its beauty with hills and lakes, great and small, streams and rivers, and amazing autumn colors. I did some fishing back there. Colorado had the Rockies covered with snow, aspen leaves in the autumn turning gold, and unbelievable star filled night skies. And on Maui, you cannot escape the beauty of the sea, not to mention the sunsets, as well as totally calm early mornings where the sea hardly moved at all. Nature is always around wherever you go. And here in Japan, it is similar. The ocean and the mountains are never far away. And like most things of beauty, you have to go out and experience them. It doesn't come calling. And that is what I like to do, go out and find it. And I did like camping. Miwako and I took our kids on many camping trips in Japan when they were small. We bought a one box car. It was a Toyota Omiya. It was a 7-passenger vehicle with lots of room for camping gear. We have 2 daughters, and we have been on these camping trips many times. It just so happens that Hiroyoshi was married with 1 son and 1 daughter. They were similar in age to our daughters. We became friends. We had some things in common. We both liked to drink, and after a month, the lessons stopped. We then went out drinking a couple of times. With that, let me tell you one such adventure. He knew of this bar in Tokyo that offered dancing. Of course, he and I weren't going to dance together, so you have to assume it would be with ladies we met there. But being the idiot that I was, I had a beer on the train on the way to Tokyo. Then when we got to the place for the dancing, after another drink or two, I was already drunk. I tried talking to girls, but nothing but slobber came out of my mouth. Yoshihiro wasn't amused, and I don't remember what happened after that. The point is that I was a bad drinker. Yoshihiro was into camping. He had a tent. So we went out a couple of times for overnight trips into the hills and mountains of the Kanto area. He was a fisherman, as I said before, and he used a lure to fish. He had an extra pole, so I tried it too. It was very difficult to master the technique as it's a very narrow space that you're fishing in with these streams, not wide rivers, trees overhead, etc. And I lost patience pretty quickly with this effort. So instead of fishing, when we went on these trips, I would instead walk along the river or onto paths that led into the river and sometimes led to nowhere. I started feeling the nature and enjoyed it. And with that, I started a new hobby, bird watching. And that is another story. But here, let me end this podcast with the story of a trip that our 2 families took. This trip was a day trip to the Watarase River in Tochigi Prefecture. This river borders Saitama, where we lived, and Tochigi in the north. And I promised Miwako I wouldn't drink that day. So she was able to have a couple of beers and relax, and I could drive home. During the day, we had a picnic. Yoshihiro brought his inflatable raft. What a guy. He would drive with the raft, or we would drive up with the raft up the river in the car, and then his wife would bring the car back, and we could ride the raft back downriver to our campsite. We did this several times, and I enjoyed it so much I decided I need a drink to celebrate. Of course, the bad news was that I promised Miwako that I wouldn't drink that day. Remember? Well, I didn't remember. So I drank too much and had a great time doing it. We finally packed up the cars and headed back home. Next was the car accident. No one was injured. It was only our car. Here's what happened. Miwako had to drive because of my broken promise. I was drunk as a skunk, they say. Even though she had a couple of beers and was not drunk at all, she had no choice. And lo and behold, she somehow drove the car up onto a curb in a small town we were in. The curbs start and end at driveways in some places here in Japan. So the beginning of the curb is rounded, not cut at a square. It's rounded. My lovely wife, for some reason, ran the car up that rounded end and then stopped. We couldn't back the car off the curb. The tie rods were damaged. We learned later. So we had to call a tow truck. With that, the police came. They had to make a report. They wanted to know exactly what happened. We pretty much bullshitted our way out of it. They made the report and listed it as an accident. That was very kind of them. Miwako certainly saved a lot of embarrassment. The car was towed to the local Toyota dealer. We used insurance to cover the repairs. Miwako was not given a ticket, and that was fantastic. That was very significant. And certainly, the whole thing was my fault. I have to admit that. And I also like to say that all's well that ends well, but just talking to Miwako now about this incident, so I can write about it here, was very painful. As Charlie Brown would say, good grief. The end.